position on the start line, that's for sure, considering her form coming into it.
Yeah, and that'll probably be the case for quite a few of these athletes. Some of these under-23 athletes would have only raced, you know, continental races. So yeah, it's an opportunity for them to step up and race internationally and, you know, represent their country at a World Championships, which is a huge privilege.
Naomi Ruff going through there, the American, just one of the last in the red swim caps, wearing the number 29 today, but not too many Americans in the start line that particularly that we expect to be right up there in the thick of things in terms of at the top end of the field. It's not the strongest American start line that we've seen.
No, they are, I think, quite young, the athletes. Some of them making their first outing here and others having competed before. Yeah, so probably just developing as athletes, getting an opportunity to test themselves against the world's best. I think 2 of our Americans had results in the 20s in Pontevedra, so they'll be hoping to improve upon that.
Just seen there Amanda Morrow and Dana Prikliova going through. The last of the athletes getting called out as we're into now those green swim caps, and the final 10 athletes just making their way down onto the start line. You can see where a number of the yellow capped athletes have gone down to this left side if you're facing the beach.
Yeah, Maria Tomei on that left side. I think I saw Minami Hayashi as well.
Well, let's take a look at this full start list then for the under-23 women. Mikhalikova and Maria Tomei will be the ones expecting to battle it out right at the top. Marta Kropko in number 12 and Rachel Hill, number 14, will also potentially be right up there in terms of getting into medal contention. Then we have the French athletes, including Ilona Hadoum, who will look to improve on what was a very impressive 2023 World Championships. Obviously in the juniors, taking that gold medal, try and take that to the next level in the under-23 category. Daisy Davies, Katie Roder up there as the British athletes down there, and the final few athletes on the start line today. The last anxious wait to get going. And the ladies are off into the water. The under-23 World Championships get going. 2 laps, taking in a 1.5 kilometers of action out there on the beach side. And it was interesting to see that the yellow caps, those leading 10, are pretty much split far left and far right out there on the beach in preparation on the start line.
Yeah, we had a distinctive split there. We had Maria Tomei, Barbara de Kooning, Minami Hayashi. They started on the left side as we look at the screen. And I would say the majority of the other yellow swim caps, our top 10, started on the right-hand side there. And having a look at them running into the water, it did look like those athletes who had placed themselves on the right side had hit the water first. So we've got 2 athletes here leading the swim. That's number 22.
Yeah, Candice Denisot, the French athlete, wearing the number 22 out there, just trying to claw her way to the front. I think that's Ania Alvarez-Corral, the Mexican athlete, might be up there alongside her, wearing the number 31 swim cap. It certainly seems like those on that left-hand side of the beach have had to pick the right route, because they're already starting to funnel their way out into a healthy advantage over that group that's on the right-hand side of your screen as you look at it right now.
Yeah, no surprise to see Candice Denisot there. She had a 3rd in Valencia at a World Cup not too long ago, and she was in a very small front group where she came out of the water pretty close to the front end. So that's
Liberty Rika, the American athlete wearing the number 37 who looks like she's leading the charge through the water then. We said that, well, it's the commentator's curse right there from the get-go, isn't it? Not the strongest American field, and then Rika's leading them through the water.
Yeah, that's a really strong swim start. So Liberty Rika, one of the Sun Devils, Arizona State University. I think there's 3 of our Americans out of the 4 who attend Arizona State University, the Sun Devils. I must get it right because the other one's the University of Arizona. So
I was going to say, you don't want to get those two mixed up. You'll be offending a lot of people over there on the other side of the pond.
Yeah, we've got Lydia Russell is University of Arizona, and our remaining 3 Americans are all the Sun Devils, Arizona State.
A little bit of inter-team rivalry never hurt anybody, did it? In terms of the university banners being worn, but all under the stars and stripes for today, of course. Rika just carving her way through those waters out towards the first of the turns. There's nobody else really getting up alongside her. They're all just filtering in nicely with Deniso just off her toes.
Yeah, so it is a clockwise swim, so 2 laps of 750 meters to make up the 1500 meter swim. Nice long first leg out to this first buoy, which I think the athletes always appreciate. It means once they hit that first buoy, there's a little bit less carnage, you know, than some of our tighter swims that we have.
It also means because it's almost staggered around the corner, it's not those 90-degree turns, so there's going to be nobody really, shouldn't be too many people on the inside that have to completely stop and make that turn when there's no room to do it. It kind of filters round, so it just adds to the speed of this swim as well today.
Yeah, and a really, really strong swim out to this first buoy by Liberty Rika, our athlete from the US. Candice Deniso sitting on her feet there, and then a little bit of a gap to our athletes in 3rd place.
It's 2 leading the charge. I'm just wondering if that silver swim cap is one of Marta Kropko just in 3rd behind them. It would be one that we'd expect to be up there, one of the strongest swimmers, 2nd at the under-23 European Aquathlon Championships this year as well, and can be dominant in the water, the under-23 Aquathlon World Champion last year.
Yeah, and I think we should also probably expect the likes of Sophia Howe of Canada, also a really strong swimmer. She should be up there too. We can see there's that silver swim cap sitting in 3rd. And we've got another of our athletes in the red on her feet, and some of our athletes in the green swim caps there.
A little bit yellow just starting to fade back slightly, but look, you can't win it in the swim. You can certainly lose it in the swim, that's for sure, if you have a bad swim. But there is also time to recover with this slightly longer distance than obviously a sprint triathlon. You do get 2 laps in the water to be able to pull yourself back into contention if you find yourself struggling at the start.
Yeah, and if some of those athletes who were placed on the far left, it looked like they ran into the water a little bit later than the athletes on the right. So it is 1,500 meters, and it is an opportunity for them to slowly make their way through the field. They'll exit the water. They'll have an Australian-style beach exit, so they'll run up onto the sand, run around a cone or a buoy on the beach, and then back into the water. But yeah, beautiful swim conditions at the moment. There's a bit of a swell, but you can see there's not much white water, that type of thing. Water's actually a nice temperature. It's not too cold, 19.3 degrees. The athletes are wearing wetsuits, so they'll be probably quite comfortable temperature-wise.
That trio at the front just starting to pull away. There's a red swim cap just in 4th off the back of them that is trying to hold both of these groups together.
You can just see there's a large contingent now making their way around that first swim buoy there. The athletes are all stacked up towards the end of the field there.
A gaggle of triathletes, is that what we call them? What's the multiple term?
I'm not quite sure. A pack.
A pack of athletes.
Pack of athletes.
Certainly trying to tear at each other to get round the buoy first and find the line out and away into space once again, as Rika is still just continuing to glide through the beautiful waters around here, Torremolinos.
Yeah, you can see our first, I would say, 15 athletes or so quite strung out. And then it gets a little bit more congested towards the back end. Just so you can see that shot there, they spread quite widely across. as you head further back in that field. So that's number 15, as we expected, Sophia Howell of Canada. She has been at the front end of quite a few World Cup swims recently.
It looks like she's making a push to be right at the front again, as she's just getting right up onto the ankles of Rika, and she's worked her way past Candice Denisot.
Yeah, so 4 of them, and a little bit of a gap there to 5th. It'll be interesting to see once they exit the water. You know, sometimes those gaps can either be closed or they can go out even further. But yeah, perhaps Sophia Howell might not have had, you know, the best start and has now made her way up to the front of the field. Her most recent result, a 15th in Valencia at the World Cup there, and she was at the front end of the swim in that race.
She's been finding a lot of kind of top 20 finishes in the World Cup stage, which is certainly not something to shy away about and not be proud of at all. It's superb, particularly for these young athletes to be competing or in and around those top 20s or so.
Yeah, and the Canadians only qualified 1 woman for Paris Olympics, so they'll be hoping in this next 4-year cycle to really focus on their female athletes, developing, you know, someone like Sophia Howell, so that they can ensure that they have 2 female athletes at least on that start line come LA in 2028.
You can see how drawn out you were touching on there, Gillian, just from this aerial shot, the wonderful shot from the drone. This group is, got the 2 at the front now as those 2 red caps just start to drop backwards slightly into the rest of the group, then a top 15 or so, and then another brief gap, and it's all just strung along the water nicely, probably stretching out for about 200 meters almost.
Yeah, it's very, very strung out. You can see the swell a little bit bigger as they're heading into shore and make their way around that barrier and head back into the water. Crowd starting to gather on the beach there as well.
It looks like the American's going to be first out of the water, at least after this first lap or so. It'll give us our first chance to have a look at the timing charts and see exactly who's positioned where. Who perhaps has a bit of ground to make up in the second lap of this swim. Still another 750 meters to go.
Yeah, they won't be catching any waves at this time of the morning.
So Rika is first out, followed by the Canadian, 2 North Americans. And Denisot and Hadoum, the French athletes. Isabella Hayes right up there as well. Robin Drieling, the Dutch athlete, in 6th. Katie Rodder in 7th. Nora Gmur, the Swiss athlete, in 8th. Daisy Davies in 9th. And Marta Kropko making up the top 10. It's about 20 seconds separating the top 20 at the moment, though. Mikhalikova down there in 16th. She goes through the first timing split. No sign of Tomei just yet, however. Sofia Rodriguez Moreno of Mexico wearing the number 8 has got herself up into the top 32 or so as the official time's coming through on your screen now.
Yeah, Maria Tomei was 14th out after that first lap. She was 15 seconds back. Brea Roderick, Kathia Shah, 25 seconds back. We know those 2 are probably 2 of our really strong cyclists in this field. So they're sitting 25 seconds back after the first lap. Maria Casals-Mujica just behind them as well.
Denisot now takes the lead out at the front. The Americans just drop back. The French athlete happy to do her turn at leading these women through the water. Howell staying just tucked in right on her toes as she did with Liberty Rika on that first lap.
Yeah, and you might see the likes of Maria Tomei start to make her way a little bit further up the field. They had a, not the start that she perhaps would have liked to have had. Barbara de Kooning as well. She's sitting just behind Maria Tome there, another 2 or 3 seconds behind her, about 19 seconds off the lead at the moment.
It's a good place for those three to be, Michalikova, Tome and Barbara de Koning. They've kept themselves right in contention at the front.
Yeah, and as expected, the two French athletes, Candice Denisot, Iona Hadoum, right up there as well. The French just seem to be really, really strong swimmers. They just seem to breed strong swimmers, strong triathletes. Iona Hadoum, our defending champion from the junior race last year, which took place in Hamburg. And Candice Denisot coming off the back of a debut podium at a World Cup in Valencia a few weeks ago.
Yeah, and the French national sprint champion as well for 2024, Denisot. Just another accolade to add to her tally. Now it's about having the staying power after putting herself right in the mix at the start of this swim, getting herself out in the lead right now. How long can she keep herself with that lead group?
Yeah, and both of those French athletes racing regularly on the French Grand Prix circuits. They'll be used to racing at a very high level because, you know, we have the very top athletes who race in that series. Candice Denisot had a podium in a French Grand Prix. I think she was on the podium with 2 of our Olympians. So she'll definitely have the experience of racing at this level, and we could see that reflected in that 3rd place in Valencia that she was able to obtain. Yeah, the French just massively beneficial having that race series. Just seems to elevate them to another level.
Well, we associate maybe with a slight bias for myself in terms of triathlon with British athletes. We think about the power of the North Americans, particularly the United States, of course. It really seems like the French, though, in the last few years have just been rising and rising, and we're not getting to a point where they're dominating at every level, but you think about the success they have in the para triathletes as well, which is coming up, of course, the Para World Championships later on this weekend, along with the rest of the action taking place in Torremolinos. They're a nation that right now you could argue are one of the more dominant ones in the world of triathlon.
Yeah, and we'll see Cassandra Bogard in the women's race later this weekend, trying to go after the World Championship title. And she'll be hoping to double up after having won that race in Paris.
What a proud moment for her as well, as for any of the French athletes, of course, competing at Paris 2024 and finding success at Paris 2024 as well. Didn't come without its controversy, of course, and the amount of money that was spent in making sure that we could get a triathlon up and underway in the centre of the city. I think for the visuals, it certainly paid off, though, for the French organising committee.
Yeah, and speaking of visuals, I don't think we could have asked for a better morning. Absolutely beautiful watching the sunrise here on the Costa del Sol in Spain. Torremolinos, one of the original beach resorts, I think, back in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, it was considered a quiet fishing village back in the day before tourism made the impact, but it's kept its traditions as well, this Spanish town. They have a height restriction on buildings that can be built around here, which means that there's no giant gaudy hotels. To some extent, there are some still pretty sizable places that you can book yourself in for a few nice days out there on the Costa del Sol. But they try to keep this place looking as traditional as possible compared to some of the other places on this strip of coastline, a coast that runs around about 8 kilometers. The beach here at Torremolinos runs up and down.
Yeah, so Candice Denisot of France leading out the swim at the moment. Sophia Howell just coming on her shoulder there. And then Iona Hadoum, our reigning junior world champion, just sitting tight there in 3rd place at the moment.
Yeah, Howell just making a charge around the boys as they head for home and head back to dry land. There's a similar point where she just started to challenge Rika a little bit on that first lap, and she's obviously seen that as an opportunity to just maybe put the afterburners on slightly in the water and test the pace of those up at the front. You can see that gap is continuing just to grow between the leading 2 groups or so and everybody else.
Yeah, we think that was a group of about 15 or 16. It looked like Susanna Michalikova was just hanging on the back of that group after the first lap. Obviously, that might have changed, and a few might have dropped off here and there. But yeah, they'll be starting to think about the exit, the run up the beach. It's going to be quite challenging. It's probably around 100 meters long. You know, it's soft sand, so that's also an element that they're going to have to deal with. And thinking about getting those wetsuits off. Yeah, if you do a rough count, there looks like around about 15 athletes in that group.
Well, they're being led back to home by a new leader as Howell has taken control at the front and is trying to kick on and find an extra bit of breathing room.
Yeah, she might be, you know, hoping to push this last part of the swim, have a really strong run up the beach and, you know, try and create a little bit of a gap heading onto the bike. She won't want a massive group of athletes around her. Ideally, she'll want a group, you know, who wants to work, smallish group, maybe 6 to 8 athletes who can work well together.
And a bit of space as well through transition too, just to give yourself the best opportunity to be able to succeed and not drop too many vital seconds going through T1.
Yeah, we're just cutting through the water there. Really, really efficient swim stroke. She looks really nice and smooth, open water swim style there. In a distinctive gap there you can see now between these first two groups. There's a yellow swim cap really trying to close that gap there. We know Michalikova was sitting in about 16th place. Barbara de Koning as well was sitting just off the back of Michalikova, so they'll be fighting to get into that group. They're going to have a really strong run up the beach, try and keep themselves in contention.
That's the two French athletes staying with the Canadian for now. Howell's not been able to bridge too much of a gap away from herself and Denisov. There'll be a look up and a sight of just the last few meters of the water.
Yeah, and the swim exit did look a little bit tricky when you watch some of those athletes coming out after the first lap. It is something that they would have practiced, but you know, sometimes the shoreline changes overnight, and depending on the tides when they had the swim familiarization and that type of thing. So sometimes there's a big drop off.
Just get that little step, don't you, that you have to then get yourself up to, but the waves suck back underneath and try and pull you back away slightly.
Yeah, and particularly if the tide is coming out. You just see another little gap starting to form between our lead 4 athletes, I think, and then a gap to our probably another 10 athletes further back.
So around about 20 minutes then. As the ladies get out of the water and make their way through the swim exit, and they'll go down towards transition to get out on the bike. And it is going to be the Canadian leading them through, Hal, followed by the 2 French women. Hal, Denisov, Hadoum and Rika. Those are the 4 that have been at the front consistently throughout this swim. Isabella Hayes, the British athlete, in 5th. Marta Kropko in 6th. Katie Roeder in 7th. Robin Dreiling in 8th. Nora Gmur in 9th. And Carolina Helga Horvath of Hungary in 10th, making up the top 10. And there is a gap between the top 10 and the rest to come. Barbara de Koning in 11th, 10 seconds off Carolina Helga Horvath.
Yeah, we thought it might be Barbara de Koning or Michalikova just dangling off the back of that group. But yeah, 2 French athletes in that group. We've got Marta Kropko as expected there, Robin Dreiling of the Netherlands,
Maria Tomei and Zuzana Michalikova down there in 16th and 18th, respectively, about 40 seconds off the leader as they come into transition. The Canadian trying to be as quick and clean as possible going through the bike preparation. She is going to be second out of transition.
Yeah, that'll be one of our French athletes out onto their bike first. Feet already in the shoes. She's not waiting around for anyone. It's a great transition. Sophia Howell in second, and then the other French athletes in third there.
Denisov, Howell, Hadoum, the first 3 out through transition. 7 seconds or so separating the top three. Kropko, Rodder and Co coming after, around about 15 seconds behind as a top 6, and then there's a gap after the top 10 of about 10 to 12 seconds or so with Barbara de Koning. Michalikova, who's been quick through transition, gained a few extra places up into 13th position. Maria Thomas dropped down into 17th. Daisy Davis right up there with that group going out as well, about 40 seconds adrift. But Candice Denisot is saying if anybody wants to come, you might as well follow me because I'm going to blaze my own trail, and that's exactly what Sophia Howell's doing, right on her rear wheel, staying with her.
Yeah, the two of them with a sizable gap already. You can see from that overhead camera shot as they navigate the first of around 15 90-degree turns. Michalikova, Brea Roderick, Maria Tomei sitting in close proximity together, so they'll be wanting to get on their bikes and really work hard. You can see Liberty Ricker there, just off the back of those three athletes in front of her. That was Kropko, Rodder, and Isabella Hayes of Great Britain.
And just dropping back a little bit, the American through transition, but a valiant effort on the swim from her, as you can see the transition results going through on the bottom of your screen. Ricker just drifting away from Kropka and Rodder there, perhaps into the clutches as well of others coming behind. I imagine Ricker's dropped away from Dreiling, Helga and Moore as well from the look of that shot that we saw, but it's the front two blazing a trail out there on their own.
Kathia Shah was out of the water in 26th place, 1 minute and 9 seconds back. We know she's one of our strongest cyclists in the field, so perhaps not the swim that she was hoping for.
Yeah, although we have seen her in the past kind of rally a group and push on from behind to get herself right up in contention by the end of this bike. It will be 8 laps, making up the 40 kilometers on this bike circuit. As Gillian touched on, it's a number of 90-degree turns just weaving their way around in a, let's say, rather unconventional fashion, this bike course, but it will provide a few twists and turns and some stings in the tail for sure. I think the one thing to say is it's difficult to work out exactly where the athletes are on the course, because a lot of it looks very samey. There's a lot of these double wide lanes for them to be working up and down, and there's so many 90-degree turns you almost lose sight of which one they're actually at.
Yeah, Denisot and Howell, they look like, you know, Howell is quite proficient around those 90-degree turns there. Looks like they're working pretty well together. But yeah, it's flat, it's technical, and sometimes, you know, people think that might be easy, but certainly this course has a large number of 90-degree turns to contend with. There's a dead turn at the far end of the course, a little bit of a climb to navigate as well. You can just see these two taking turns, working well together. And here as they just start the little climb.
Yeah, the climb will take them up to that dead turn, where everything will bunch up quite nastily. If you're in one of those groups, not for the leading two ladies, however, it's not going to be too much of a problem fighting for space on the road for them.
Yeah, and it looked like that group behind had swelled to probably about 5 athletes. So that chase group, I think, around 5 athletes behind. And they'll be hoping to try and get organized and work really hard and try and... There you can just see them now, actually, coming around the corner there. So it looks like our chase group, there's about 7 athletes in that chase now. And probably a matter of seconds, perhaps 5 seconds or so now, the gap between Sophia Howell, Denisot, and those chasers.
Yeah, going through the bike split, the first split that we have on our timing charts here, it was around about 5 seconds, maybe back to 7 or so. So that 7 or so group strong have done really well to just reel in Howell and Denisot.
Yeah, Robin Dreiling driving that group. She had a really strong result at the World Cup in Rome 2 weekends ago. A real breakthrough performance for her there, that 8th place in Rome.
And then the group behind, there's another 30 seconds adrift, but I tell you, the 4 of the top 5 in that group are Michalikova wearing number 1, Maria Tomei wearing number 2, Barbara de Koning wearing number 5, and Brea Roderick wearing number 3, the New Zealand athlete. So those 4 at the front of the next chase group are saying, look, we're not falling behind here. We need to get ourselves right up in contention. And I imagine they're going to be pushing the pace. Kathia Shah, about 50 seconds adrift, has already made up 10-15 seconds or so out of the water, so she's getting the hammer down with a group of around about 5 athletes around her, including Maria Carrido, Julia Brocker, Maria Casals-Moica and Clara Kalkvist.
So Hal and Denizo now being reeled in by our chasers. So a lead group of 9 athletes now. See Isabella Hayes of Great Britain sitting on the back of that group, Horvath of Hungary. We've also got Marta Kropko of Hungary in that front group. Got Nora Gmur of Switzerland.
Yeah, we've seen Kropko sometimes struggle a little bit on the bike, and that's been where she's fallen back slightly. But on this sort of course, does it pay in for the strong cyclists to be able to make breaks away? Because there aren't those long straights where they can drive, but there are slower turns where they can maybe add a bit of impetus coming out of the turn and get the power down slightly. Does it benefit the stronger cyclists, this sort of track?
Yeah, Marta Kropko has been in scintillating bike form the past few months. She had a fracture in her leg, and I think has obviously focused a lot on her cycling. She had that magnificent breakaway with Maya Kingma at the World Cup in Karlovy Vary, where they were able to manufacture almost a 3-minute lead. So she's cycling really well. So vastly different course, this one, to Karlovy Vary, which has that massive hill in it. But there are a lot of twists and turns to really bite those legs. So, you know, her tactic might be to try and work really hard on those technical sections and try and, you know, tire the legs off everyone around her and those athletes chasing behind. Yeah, so as a stronger athlete, you have an opportunity to try and really wear down the legs of your competitors. We can just see them making their way back down towards the promenade, towards the beach, where they'll take a right turn, head back through transition, and make their way onto their second of 8 laps on this 40k bike course.
Yeah, they come down La Riviera Avenue and then make their way all across the beachfront, although slightly separate from the very beachfront by the metal barriers down there.
Yeah, last time split from these front 9 to Michalikova chasing in 10th place was 37 seconds. So we'll get another idea of what that time split is shortly.
The front 9 separated by just a sole second. As we wait to see what the next group is doing in terms of getting back into contention. Katie Rodder leading them through, the British athlete, for the end of the first bike lap, but Deniso Hadum, Howe, Horvath, Kropko, Hayes, Dreiling, Gmur, all up there.
It does look like they're all rolling through and taking their turn. You can see they'll do a few seconds and roll through to the right-hand side there.
Kathia Shah at the front of the next group. She's eaten another 10 seconds into the leading group, but that chase pack's fallen back by about 3 seconds or so. Shah, Tomei, Barbara de Koning, Broderick, Kukilova, all around about 40 seconds back now. That's a group that's going to run of about 13 or 14 of them. They're about between 40 seconds and 50 seconds adrift of our leading ladies right now.
Yeah, Shah was over a minute out of the water, so she's definitely, you know, biked up. You said that chase group has lost a little bit of time, but I think Shah's actually cycled through, and they're probably all going to jump on the back of her wheel, and yeah, let's see if she can close that gap. We just saw, I think, Liberty Ricker falling off that group on one of the technical sections there.
If one thing Kathia Shah can do, it's find a bit of drive on the bike to reel herself back in contention whenever possible. And it's useful, I guess, for that chase group to have someone like her keeping that momentum and motivation going out to the front.
Yeah, and the motivation is that it's an Olympic distance race. So we've got 40Ks on the bike. They've only done 1 lap. So, you know, they've still 6.5 bike laps left to go. So important to remain motivated, and hopefully she'll have some other athletes around her taking some turns, she does have some strong athletes. Barbara de Kooning's in there. Brea Roddick, we know, is a really good cyclist. Michalikova as well. So she does have some other athletes around her to help. So hopefully they can get organized and motivated, and you know, they will have an opportunity then to try and eat into this deficit of this lead group of 9 athletes.
Yeah, just seeing Isabella Hayes there out of the seat. It's not a intense climb really up towards that dead turn, but it's enough to make you need to drive a little bit extra perhaps, just to be able to keep the legs going and then bring the momentum back down the hill and onto the twists and turns once again as they weave their way around the streets of Torremolinos.
I think they'll be very thankful that it's dry today, looking at all of those pedestrian crossings.
Dry, and for the most part quite nicely shaded as well from the trees on either side of the avenues that run around this fishing town. It's just a slight bit of respite from the beating down heat that there will be a bit of respite from, of course, out on the beachfront on the run, but it's only going to get hotter and hotter. The cooler you can be, the better.
Yeah, so 2 French athletes, we've got 3 British athletes in there. We've got Nora Gmur, who is based and trains in Leeds. She's a training partner to Beth Potter.
This is a slightly fragmented chase group that is just starting to stretch out slightly, perhaps because Kathy Shah and co are pushing it at the front. Barbara de Koning there just at the back with Ruff, the American.
Yeah, Kathy Shah will be really putting the pressure on there in that chase group.
Again, it's another new name that leads the lead group through at the bike split on lap 2, with Nora Gmur, the Swiss athlete, taking her time right up at the front to pull these ladies along.
Yeah, did a large amount of training with Beth Potter, and as a training partner helped her a lot with her preparation leading into those Paris Olympic Games, and we know that was really beneficial for Beth.
Not much of a reduction in the gap, however, between the chasers and the leading 9. It's down to 39 seconds. They've dropped a second off, with Kathy Shah once more the head of that chasing group, along with Maria Tomei.
Yeah, and that's probably going to motivate this front group. They know that, you know, the chasers haven't eaten anything into their lead. That'll motivate them to carry on working really well together, which it looks like they are doing so.
They don't really get a good sight very often, either of the group in front, if you're in that chase group. So it's hard to know and really judge how far adrift you are without the information, of course, from people on the trackside when you get back down towards the technical.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tricky bike course. They don't really catch sight of each other. On the run, for sure, you know, they've got that out and back along the promenade, along the beach, and but then, you know, it might be a little bit too late keeping an eye on your competitors.
So I suppose is where the coaches and the trainers really pay dividends in that point of feeding that information, getting it across to them during this. They know whether they need to work harder or not.
Yeah, for sure there'll be the French coaching staff will be out there, the British coaching staff will be out there. They always take large coaching management contingents out to these World Championships. So they'll be sitting at different points on the bike course, and they'll be in contact with each other, you know, with walkie-talkies, those type of things, and they'll be showing boards of times to their athletes. So they'll know exactly what that gap is to the chase group. So they'll be getting fed that information, which really hugely beneficial. Obviously, we have 2 Brits in this group. We've got 2 French in this group. Yes, they'll all have that information. And it'll just keep the motivation for them. They'll know that, you know, they're cycling really well. They're working well together. They'll know they have some really strong runners behind them. They don't want those athletes to catch up to them. Got Maria Tomei in that chase group. She's dangerous. We know she had a phenomenal Olympic Games in Paris. She's our silver medalist from Pontevedra last year.
Yeah, that 11th place, just missing out on the top 10. I mean, you think about last year in Pontevedra being in silver rather than gold, and then not quite in the top 10. There's going to be a bit more steely desire in the Portuguese athlete to go one better than last year. This year, of course, there's going to be a bit of work needing to be done, though, to eat into that 39-second gap from the last split that we had. There's a few others that are just falling back as well. Manami Hayashi, the Japanese athlete, is now around about 90 seconds adrift. Julia Brocker as well has fallen back to over a minute adrift. The German wearing the number 7, who we expected perhaps great things from. The Mexican athletes as well, Sofia Rodriguez Moreno and Ana Maria Valentina Torres Gomez, who were considered to be right up in that kind of top 15 or so that you put in with a really strong chance of making a podium today. They're almost 2 minutes back now in another struggling group of around about 6 or 7 athletes back there, along with Eula Behrens as well.
Yeah, sometimes it's a difficult decision for the athletes whether they race, you know, under 23 or they race in the elites category. We know Kathia Shah raced, I think she was chasing Olympic points, that type of thing, so she was racing in the elites category, not going over the after the title. I think post-Olympic Games, though, a lot of athletes will be focusing on gaining the world title. So I think that's why we've got such a strong field of under 23 women here today. Almost 50 athletes racing. Like I said to you, I think earlier, it's one of the biggest under 23 fields at a World Championships that I remember there being for a while. Yeah, so it's really great to see these athletes going after the prestige of gaining that world title. You just hear one of the coaches or parents or someone shouting there, 40 seconds. So that gap's still sitting at 40 seconds.
Yeah, it's not flinching much, and it's probably due to the credit of the group out in front. This is the chase group, including Michalikova, Davies as well, Shah leading it, Tomei, those the front two. Trying to drive this group on.
It doesn't look like anyone else is taking their turn behind Kathia Shah, which is going to make life, you know, a little bit difficult. It would be great if, you know, a few other athletes were rolling through, taking a bit of a turn.
And they might have to in order to close down that 40-second gap or so. I'm sure there'll be a couple of looks from that front pair, at least, back to the others to say, hey, come on, guys, someone's got to step up and give us a hand up at the front here, because we can't do it all on our own.
Yeah, Kathia Shah, Maria Thome, they're racing this race for that title. You know, they could be racing the elite race, but they're in this under 23 race because they want their title, so there's no point in hanging around in that group. Kathia Shah really trying to drive them. Maria Thome sitting just, you know, on Kathia Shah's wheel there. Hopefully you're going to help out. They do have some firepower there in the way of Bria Roderick, Susanna Michalikova. Both of those athletes have actually cycled professionally. Michalikova, I think, recently raced in the Slovakian Time Trial Championships, finishing in 5th place. Bria Roderick, I think, came 9th in her national cycling championships.
Is there something to be said as well about being patient about when to close that gap at all from that chase group behind? I mean, the tactics out there on the course, if you exert all of your energy now and then somebody decides to maybe try and push the tempo up at the front, rather than maybe just slowly grinding, we're only a quarter of the way through this bike course, a quarter and maybe a half of a lap or so. There's no need to completely rush to gain those 40 seconds, particularly if there are some of those stronger runners in there as well that will think, well, 40 seconds, if I can get that down to 20, I can make up 20 seconds fairly quickly out on there on the run.
I'd say yes and no, and I think that's probably where triathlon differs quite a bit to professional cycling, where you'll see them all of a sudden make a move where you almost think it's too late and they close the gap. Triathlon, I think there's a motivational aspect, so I think, you know, you start to lose a little bit of motivation as the bike goes further on. So I think it's really important to keep that motivation high. You know that you're eating into that deficit, even if it's, you know, 5-10 seconds per lap, which at the moment they're not. Yeah, and you just don't want the chasers to lose the motivation, because then they stop working together, and that's where the gap then goes out even further. So yeah, a bit of a tricky one. But yeah, I'd say it's probably better off trying to chase that down as quickly as you can.
That lead 9 has gone through the 3rd bike split. No real change in terms of who's making up that group. It's just whoever wants to lead them through at the split that continues to rotate around as everybody's doing their hard graft. And that shows a group that's working together with a individual purpose, but a group mentality in terms of doing the best that they can out there on the bike as well. And that gap's gone up to 46 seconds now. As Maria Tomei sends them through. Rikilova, the athlete from the Czech Republic, just splitting the woman wearing the number 2 and the number 4. Kathia Shah now dropping into 3rd in that chase group. But yeah, up to 46 seconds, and that will be, well, needless to say, not the way that anybody in that group wants to see it going right now.
No, and Kathia Shah has done a lot of racing lately on the Super Tri circuit. So she's been traveling all over the world racing, you know, the very short Super Tri races. So there also might be elements of her being a little bit tired from all of that travel. That she would have raced last weekend, I think, in Toulouse. Yeah, so perhaps legs not feeling as fresh as she would have hoped as well. As we see Naomi Ruff there and Levi, I think, of Israel.
Yeah, those two at the back of that chase group, and then they've got another 20 seconds or so where Barbara de Koning and Julia Brocker and co are the ones that are trying to maybe reel in that second group. It's the 3rd chase group that's about a minute behind. There's only 3 or so of them. Brocker, in fact, has gone another 30 seconds adrift of that, and she's down now 90 seconds away from the leaders in 21st. The gaps are starting to appear, and you're getting some that are just getting caught between some of these groups as well and stuck slightly in no man's land.
Yeah, our lead group of 9, and like you said, Ollie, we've got the athletes in 10th through to 17th as our chase group, and then you know, another group further back. You really catch sight there. Robin Drailing of the Netherlands driving that front group. She cycled really, really well in the Rome World Cup race 2 weekends ago. And she's obviously really buoyed in confidence by her result there. She's ranked 10th coming into this race. She was 23rd in Abu Dhabi at the World Championships back in 2022.
They just missed out on that podium at the Under-23 European Sprint Championships.
And 14th at the Junior World Championships in 2021.
Well, that competitive drive is what keeps these athletes from going on, and you know, to just miss out on a podium. Some of these big major events always just gives you a lingering feeling. I mean, Gillian is always looking to be first to the coffee machine at breakfast, let alone anything else. I mean, the competitive drive stays there whatever you're doing.
The coffee machine is life, isn't it?
When Gillian comes 4th at getting to that, she's got to get into the top 3 on the next day, that's for sure, and that's what it's like for the athletes who are actually competing out there today.
Yeah, we can just see our athletes coming through transition now on this beach section of the course.
40 seconds, you wouldn't say is insurmountable for anybody in that group at the back?
No, it's not insurmountable. Like I said, I think a lot of it will be motivational based. If they can stay motivated, and also might start getting a bit tired if no one else is working and you're the only one working, or you only have 1 or 2 of you working. So I think a few factors in play. We'll just see what that time split is. So it was 46 seconds, I think, on the last. So it's hovering around the same, 43 seconds. So they're not losing, but they're not really gaining. I think these next 2 or 3 laps will be really, really important. They can start eating into that that deficit, you know, by 5 or 10 seconds per lap. That'll just start to build a little bit of confidence in those chases. And conversely, if that goes out, that's going to do the opposite. So yeah, I think it's going to be key these next few laps on the bike for that chase group to try and keep themselves in the race. And also for this lead group to just put their heads down and carry on doing what they're doing. Really focus, work hard together. And we just see one of our lapped athletes there. That might have been the athlete from Guatemala.
Yeah, Marilena Alejandra Abigail Aguilar Bolaños of Guatemala. Just struggling on the very back of the group and being lapped by the leaders as they go through.
Yeah, truly international field here today. We've got athletes from all over the globe, which is fantastic to see. We've got South America, we've got Africa represented, we've got the Oceanias represented, Asia, we've got the Americas. So yeah, fantastic to see.
And what we almost touched on earlier as well is the fact that you've got all of these athletes that perhaps performed extremely well in their kind of regional cup events, etc. So they'll come in with confidence, but you don't really know how you're going to do unless you're a tried and tested, experienced athlete on the World Cup events or maybe on some of the World Triathlon Championship Series events as well, how you're going to do compared to some of these athletes that have only been racing on the Asian stage or the African stage for the last 12 to 24 months or so.
Yeah, you know, our athlete from Guatemala, she might never have raced at this level before, so a great opportunity for her, and also to see where she is and what work she needs to do. Just great seeing triathlon reach all corners of the world and all continents represented, particularly at under 23 female category. Yeah, it's just wonderful to have that representation across the globe.
So we still have top 17 that consists of a group of 9 and then the chasing 8, separated by about 44 seconds or so. There's a small group, a trio, if you will, of Maria Alzaga Criado and Xingying Yu and Barbara de Koning. We're about 1:15 and trying to do anything they can to get back at least with that group that's making up the top 17 or so. And then after that, there's a big drop-off of around about 30 to 40 seconds. Julia Broca, Maria Casals Moica, the Spaniard who would have hoped to have done really well, the Spanish contingent, of course, on home soil here today in Torremolinos on the Andalusian coast. Eula Behrens in there as well. She's now 2:30 back, the German athlete. There are some names that we were expecting to be far higher up the order. Sofia Rodriguez Moreno, 2.5 minutes off the leaders now as well.
Yeah, and tough for those athletes to find themselves in that position.
And Rachel Hill, excuse me, is well off the pace, second in the Oceania Tri Championships of this year, but the step up to the under-23 World Champs today is proving to be a little bit too much for her. The Australian struggling over 3 minutes back now, about 3.5 minutes back, down in 38th position.
And Anahi Alvarez Corral as well, I think, was sitting almost 5 minutes back. I'm not so sure if she's still in the race, but she was sitting 4.5 odd minutes back. We know how dangerous she could have been had she been in contact come the run, but it doesn't look like it's going to be Anahi Alvarez's day here today.
Yeah, Lydia Russell is going to be DNF, as is Borbela Saccia, excuse me, the Hungarian athlete. She's also going to be a DNF. Confirmation as well that the Guatemalan athlete Marlene Alejandra Abigail Aguilar Bolaños has also been lapped and is falling down the order. So well, the leaders start to pick off some of the stragglers in that sense. They're just still getting about their business. Not really seen any arguing. You know, we sometimes see a bit of conversation at the back. It's been very quiet and almost orderly out there at the front in that group.
Yeah, it has been. It looks like they're all rotating through quite nicely. We know we have, you know, some athletes from the same countries and up there. We've got 2 of our Hungarians, we've got 3 of our Brits and 3 of our French. So I guess we've got a few little partnerships going there, don't we? Robin Drailing of the Netherlands, the sole Dutch woman, Sophia Hall, Nora Gemur, also flying solo for their countries.
That may give them the impetus just to group up themselves then in that group, as confirmation Shah 46 seconds back, leading that group. The chasing pack through, Maria Tomei.
Yeah, but Herdum and Denizo will be very familiar with racing together, as will the British athletes who race in the British Super Series. Katie Rodder and Isabella Hayes, they all have raced each other and competed with each other very regularly.
So into the second half of this 40-kilometre bike. As it wriggles and weaves its way around the streets of Torremolinos.
Yeah, just like the sun's getting a little bit brighter out there. I don't think the heat will play too much of a factor for these women here today. They'll probably finish their race, you know, before the warmth of the day, but certainly the men might feel a little bit later on. We can see Herdum there, our reigning junior world champ for the time being until tomorrow.
And the chase group. Again, there's nobody really looking like it's really hard grafting or pushing a tempo of sorts. It looks very similar to what we're seeing from the lead group, which guess it's no surprise then that that number is staying at around about 46 seconds or so. But 46 minutes would be a long way off, wouldn't it? I think that would be an insurmountable.
Yeah, we can just see a few little gaps that start to form as they navigate some of those more technical sections. So some of our athletes might be a little bit more technically astute than others, although a lot of these women in this front group have raced at this level quite regularly, so they should be pretty good on a course like this. And they would have known this course, for months now, and been able to practice all of these 90-degree turns, all the technical elements. A lot of the French Grand Prix racing, the British Super Series racing, it is all very technical, and it's designed to equip and prepare these athletes for these courses.
So that is the end of the fourth lap of the bike then as they go through. Contrary to the graphic that we had just a moment ago.
Yeah, that gap's gone down slightly, so it's 40 seconds. Yeah, a little bit of a push. A little bit of a push there. We're now at the halfway point. Sorry, no, we're not on the halfway point. We're way past the halfway point, I think. Halfway points of the bike. Yeah, so we do still have the opportunity. Sorry, the graphic on our screen there, bike lap 6, that is incorrect at the moment. But yeah, so like I said, Ollie, able to, eat into that.
And that's the thing, if you can, we've just seen around about 6 seconds taken out by that chasing group. If you can do 6 seconds over the next 4 laps that remain of this bike ride, suddenly you're in a much, much more advantageous position, around about 14 seconds off these leaders, and you'll look at that and say, right, well, that's for the strong runners, at least in the chase group, that's particularly someone like Maria Tomei, she'll look at that and think, right, I can reel in so many of that top 9 from that sort of distance out, particularly if any of them have any struggles through transition, and I can be as quick as possible through T2. So if the push is now, then it's not really a problem. If it starts just staying and lingering again, though, at 40 seconds rather than continuing to come down, and it'll be interesting to see if there's a reaction as well when the leaders get that word that 6 seconds has been taken out of it.
Yeah, and you can just see Michalikova there, and we hadn't really seen from the previous shots her at the front of that group. So, perhaps a little bit of motivation as well. They know that they haven't lost any more time, and they have an opportunity now. There's still 20 Ks left on this bike course. So, like you say, a few seconds each lap, and then they might find themselves in closer contact. And, once that gets down to around about 20-odd seconds, I think that will certainly motivate them even further.
It might just give them a chance to see a bit more of the leading group every so often, just on the laps on the bike, and it's much easier to rein somebody in that you can see in the distance, isn't it, rather than wandering and not really knowing that gap, being able to provide perspective on it with your own eyes.
We just catch sight of our leaders here, Marta Kropko just sitting in there behind Sophia Howell, Iona Hadum, Candice Denizo.
Speed bumps here on the roads of Torremolinos, doing their job of just slowing some of the athletes down as they have to go over them. Stiff saddles, not going to be very pleasant going over those for this weekend for any of the athletes involved. As I say, it's a fantastic weekend of World Triathlon action coming up across the next few days or so. The juniors coming up tomorrow. We've got the para-tri action on the Sunday as well. The elite men and women taking place Sunday and Monday. It's been good. We've seen already a few crowds out there on the beach. We've heard some of the young school kids around this circuit as well today. Just keeping an eye on some of the action. A few have been able to get up out of bed early enough and enjoy some of the World Triathlon action that will continue throughout the weekend. Round through bike split 5 we go. Now we have the patient wait of around about 40 seconds or so to see how that gap has changed, if it has at all, with the chase group.
Yeah, we could just see, like, at the right hand of the shot there, our chase group coming through. And that might be one of the only points on the bike course where they can actually see each other.
And it is going down. That chase group down to now about 33 seconds. Kathy Ashar and co. Michalikova Brea Roderick, Maria Tomei, all just making a move now. That's another 7 seconds or so taken out of the leaders, and that's the sort of gap that chase group will be happy to see.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely key. So we're now sitting at, like you said, Ollie, 33 seconds. If they can go through on the next lap of that bike, and that's sitting in the 20 seconds, that's really, really going to motivate those chasers.
The carrot is well and truly on the stick now for them. Those legs can just start moving and moving.
Robin Drayling driving the front of the field here. Nora Gmur rotating through.
Do you expect a reaction from the front?
Yeah, I would expect a reaction. You know, these athletes have been leading the race now for half of the bike. They don't want to give away this lead. So they'll be getting fed the information as well. They'll know that it's now down to just over 30 seconds. They need to get themselves organized. They need to stay motivated. They've put themselves in a fabulous position to go after the title. So why would you want to give that away?
Now, we do sometimes see a lead group when they feel that the chasing group is just getting closer and closer, that they can kind of just allow themselves to be enveloped by a chasing group. That's all. I just wonder if, you know, the gap is large enough at this point on the bike that it would make them think that they don't want to allow that to happen at all.
Yeah, that's a valuable point. And I think, you know, the runners in that group, they might have that thought process. You know, the stronger runners, they might be happier to, you know, just sit around a little bit more. But our athletes who, you know, might not back their run as much, they certainly will want to make sure that they maintain that gap. So we know Marta Kropko, for example, coming back from an injury, she might not be in the run form that she would like to be in. So she, you know, will have the motivation to try and keep that gap. And you have the athletes who perhaps, you know, don't back themselves as one of the top runners in the group. They'll want to try and, you know, get as much time as possible as they head out onto that run.
Just wonder if we then might see that group split slightly at all as they get ready to come round and complete lap 5 on the bike. Just 3 more to go. This will be the point where, you know, 7 seconds in half a lap is a sizable gap that's been knocked out of it. If it comes down another 7 seconds, as you say, with 3 laps to go at 24, 25 seconds, it will be a really hard push if that momentum can stay with that chasing group. But it will be one that will see them right on their toes. As you can see, that chase group suddenly appearing now in the background, and they are there. They do have a visual going along the seafront, one of the longer stretches of this bike course. The visuals all important for that motivation.
Yeah, and perhaps for the first time they would have seen the lead motorbike just sitting on the back of that group. First time they perhaps would have seen that, and they'll be, oh wow, you know, we were within touching distance now. We can see now that gap is now 27 seconds. Another
6 seconds knocked out of it. It was 33 down to 27. Kathia Shah, Mikalikova are leading the push. In fact, it's Maria Tomei as well. Brea Broderick, the head 4 of today's race, wearing the caps 1, 2, 3, 4, are heading that chase back and really pushing them right up towards the leading 9. We wait to see the reaction, if any at all. Didn't see any of the athletes looking backwards, actually, in that leading 9. Might want to just have a quick check. It's going to be a group of around about 6 athletes or so that will be very much looking like they're going to join them in the next 2 laps or so if it continues at this sort of pace.
Yeah, and once they've put themselves in a position where they're 20-odd seconds behind, you know, the stronger runners, they can also run down that time deficit and even run themselves onto the podium, even if that bike deficit doesn't go below 20 seconds. So if you think of the likes of someone like Maria Tomei, we know what a strong runner she is. She's certainly one of those athletes who could potentially run herself onto the podium if they keep that gap there. They close that gap, however, you know, then she's putting herself in with a shot at the title.
You can see there's a little extra effort coming from that chasing group. See Tomei working hard just to stay with Kathia Shah, who's saying, look, I'm going to go. If you guys want to come with me, then you're more than welcome to, but you've got to keep at my pace right now. They've just bided their time over the first 3 or 4 laps or so and just started to make their move right at that midway point of that 4th lap.
Yeah, Kathia Shah, just a super, super strong cyclist. Hasn't really done any bike races or cycling races per se, like her competitors Susanna Michalikova and Brea Roderick. But yeah, she's mentioned in interviews that she just loves riding with the boys. And I think that's probably what makes her really, really strong. You know, cycling with the guys. You know, I've heard some of the guys say they even sometimes struggle to keep up with her in training sessions. So she's a really, really strong athlete on the bike.
That is no surprise considering how good she is. I mean, she's not exactly the tallest athlete either. There's a lot of power just put into one small, tiny body that can drive through on these bike courses. She makes it look fairly effortless as well. She's got that dominant pose on the bike almost. There's no shake, there's no grimace at all. It's just, right, keep pushing, keep those legs working.
She's been based, I think, in Banyoles in Spain. She's also based out of the High Performance Center in Circe in Switzerland. So I think those are her main 2 training bases, depending on the time of the year.
She's only got a couple of wins to her name, only really a handful of podiums as well, Kathia Shah, considering how much we have spoken about her over the last 12 to 18 months.
Was 4th in Pontevedra last year, so just missed that podium. So she doesn't want to put herself in that position again, does she?
Not at all. And last victory came back in 2022 at the Swiss Sprint Championships. I mean, it's a long time to wait for somebody of her ability, particularly when it comes to being out on the bike. She's got to hold it together on the run as well, potentially, if they can continue to close that gap. There's a lot of strong runners in this field as the leading 9 have gone through the bike split. The gap now down to 19 seconds. This is going to become a sizable group, you feel, over the next lap or so.
Yeah, and that's really great cycling by those chasers. Just, you know, remaining motivated, backing themselves, working well together and closing that deficit. It's so easy to get disheartened and unmotivated, and just goes to show, you know, in Olympic distance racing there's an opportunity if you could just eat into the laps, you know, keep motivated, work well together.
And if you've got the strengths in the riders around you, deficits can always be reduced if you're in that chase group. Confirmation then of our leaders coming through on your screen. Over an hour into this Olympic distance triathlon here in Torremolinos that makes up the Under-23 Women's Championships. A gorgeous day, as you can see by the shots here from the drone. Beautiful blue seas, not too far away from where the cyclists are now, and they'll be taking the left-hand turn back down to the waterfront in the next few moments or so. Getting ready to start lap 7 of 8.
So 9 athletes in the lead group. Our chasers, who are 19 seconds adrift now, that group is made up of 7 athletes. We've got Kathia Shah, Maria Tomei in there, Brea Roderick of New Zealand, Michalikova, Prekralova of the Czechia, Daisy Davies of Great Britain, Aviv Levi of Israel, and Naomi Ruff of the USA are in that chase group.
I have to say, I do find it amusing that caps 1 to 4 from the swim are stood out there and in that chase group, and they, for the last lap or so, have been 1, 2, 3 and 4 going through in terms of leading that group and dragging them on. When that kick has been made, it's been the big guns that have provided that element of power out there on the bike for the chasing group.
Yeah, and those 4 athletes that are ranked 1 to 4, they're, you know, familiar with racing on the World Cup circuits, some of them on the World Triathlon Championship Series circuit, so they've earned those 1 to 4, and they'll, you know, they'll be wanting to go out there and perform in this race.
And it doesn't sound like much, but just having the ability to take that step to the very top level, to the World Triathlon Championship Series, you know, some of them, Kathia Shah's got a top 30 in her back pocket on the World Triathlon Championship Series. I know Brea Roderick does from Sunderland last year. It doesn't sound like much when you think about the the World Triathlon Championship Series, but for such young athletes to be performing at that level really is a sign of the quality that they have and the ability to compete at almost every single level now in this sport.
Yeah, it is a big step up from World Cup to World Triathlon Championship Series level. It's the very, very top level of racing, and it's very, very tough. You've got the best of the best. Any weakness will be exposed. So, yeah, the fact you've got such young athletes already competing and doing, you know, respectively well on that series just goes to show.
Well, they're all part of one group now. 9 have been caught by 7. And have become 16, and that's going to be mildly irritating to say the least, I imagine, for the likes of Nora Gmur and Candice Denisot, who have been leading that bike for so long, and so we've taken a little bit more time to push the pace than others. Be interesting to see if the foot kind of comes off the gas pedal, so to speak, for the likes of Kathy Ashar and Maria Tomei and Mikalikova as well, or if they say, well, if we've got some momentum, we can push on a bit more. It does look like they're all just going to form up as one group, however, and everybody's going to start backing their chances on the run.
Yeah, Tomei looked like she was trying to make her way straight to the front there. And yeah, with, you know, 2 laps left on the bike, they'll be starting to keep a little bit of an eye now on the run. I guess for the chasers, the hard work, so to speak, has been done, and there might be a little bit of an opportunity to sit in this pack and take a little bit of a break.
Can you bring almost the group down a touch as well? Once you've made that push, you can take your foot off the gas and you can slow almost everybody down with that group mentality that kind of seeps in?
Yeah, if you're the one who's been pushing on the front of that group, you've now caught up. You now don't want to be sitting on the front. You can slot yourself in, you know, around about 6th or 7th place and just sit there. That's going to bring down the intensity massively. Give yourself an opportunity to have a little bit of a break. It might also mean that you know, one of the other athletes might see it as an opportunity to make a break if they don't back themselves as much on the run, and they, you know, want to try and get a little bit of an advantage heading into that 10K run. But yeah, for the time being, they're all just sitting together, probably just a bit of recalibrating from those chases and keeping, you know, a little bit of half an eye, half a thought on that 10K run that is going to be coming up in not too long.
Yeah, it'll be that last lap or so. There might be a little bit of jostling for position maybe as the some of the back markers, so to speak, some of the other chasers start to come through. I mean, the gap between the leaders and then 18th place is up to 2.5 minutes between Clara Kalkvist of Denmark, who sat in 18th, and Naomi Ruff, the American, in 17th. Yeah, there is a gulf in quality that is starting to show, I think you would call it.
Yeah, there's no danger, you know, from those chasers who are now 2.5 minutes back. They're not going to make up that deficit in 2 laps. You know, if we had someone like Anahi Alvarez Corral sitting there, maybe, you know, she could probably run 2 or 3 minutes into, you know, a lot of these athletes, but she's not up there.
Yeah, it's going to be a frustrating end for Barbara de Koning's 2024 if this is going to be the latter part of her year and maybe one of the last races of the year for her. She was 14th in the European Championships at the elite level back in September this year, 11th in Tiszagyváros in Hungary. She's had podiums in the European Cup events as well. You know, it's been a really good 2024 for the Dutch woman. It's slightly a shame, isn't it, to see her so far back, 2.5 minutes from what is competing with any of this top 16 or so going to be competing for medals. De Koning is going to be competing for best of the rest, potentially.
Yeah, she'll be disappointed. You know, she was 9th last year. She was 10th back in 2022. She would have wanted to improve on that. She was a reserve for the Paris Olympics. She's had some really good results this year, so I think she'll be a little bit disappointed. She's also one of those athletes who's been racing the Super Tri circuit. Would have raced last weekend, been doing a lot of traveling, so perhaps, you know, taking it out of the legs a little bit. Maybe this wasn't a focus for her. Maybe the Super Tri was, and she's, you know, chosen to focus on that over this. But yeah, I think she'll be disappointed to find herself sitting 2.5 minutes back.
Liberty Ricker, who's leading the swim, what feels like a long time ago now, is 2 minutes 45 back. Then there's another minute back between the 24th and 25th place athlete, Julia Maria Alcala Rosales of Honduras, and the American Liberty Ricker. It's a sizable spread across this course right now, but all of our attention is going to be on that top 17. We're only separated by 4 seconds. A lot can happen between now and the end of the run out there on the seafront.
Yeah, and even with this group of 17, it's it's hard to predict. There's no standout runner, I guess. Let's say there's no Alex Yeo or Nahi Alvarez, that type of standout runner in this group. There's certainly some very, very strong, talented runners.
Much to their relief, I'm sure there's nobody of that standard and ability to basically break away straight away.
But yeah, a lot of these women have had strong runs recently, so yeah, it's going to be a really good shootout come this 10K run. Candice Denizo had that podium in Valencia. Robin Drayling with the 8th in Rome. Freya Roderick has had a strong year. She had an 8th in Coloviveri, which was her best World Cup result. A really tough Olympic distance course. Maria Tome was 5th on that race as well. Iona Hadoum, reigning junior world champ. Debut at this distance, so she's probably an unknown factor. She herself probably doesn't know how she's going to perform over 10K, but she's a quality athlete. It's really hard to pick a top who's top of the top here when it comes to the run. It's going to be fascinating.
Just a little bit of jockeying positions and a rotating round up at the front of this group now as they continue to weave and wind their way through the streets. It's far too early to be thinking about jostling for position just yet for going into things like transition, but
yeah, important to also stay present and stay focused. We can see one of our athletes has tried to make a push off the front of the group there.
Yeah, just off the last couple of turns, there's suddenly a surge out there at the front, and nobody else really seems to be trying to go with it.
It looks like it is being closed down, but yeah, like I said, Charlie, I thought, if someone wanted to make a move, they probably would try to do it on one of these last 2 laps of the bike. That's been closed down now. But yeah, important, for that very reason to not be thinking about the run too much. Maybe half a thought on it, but to remain present, still need to be focused, cover any breaks that are happening. And also, it's a technical course, so really important to focus on the technical aspects of the course, the cornering. We don't want any mishaps now so late. They've done a lot of work, particularly the chasers, to get into this group. So there the bell goes, 1 lap to go.
Just wonder if it was Robin Dreiling who was the one that made the push off the bike there, as she's been brought in by everybody else. Candice Denizo right up at the front there. It was difficult to see from our vantage point who was the one trying to make that extra surge. I have to ask the question to you, Gillian, as a former athlete. I cannot remember the last time I saw a breakaway like that be successful, particularly late on in a bike, and 2 or 3 people really separate themselves from the rest of the group. It doesn't, it's tried, but doesn't tend to provide anything too often.
Yeah, it depends on who's racing, and it depends, it's tricky. When we had the likes of, I guess, Jess Learmouth, Flora Duffy, those athletes, I think, when they were in a race, it was right before these type of breakaways happening. Jess has had a baby. She's just coming back to training and racing. So when you get a group of really, really strong bikers together, there's opportunity. Similarly, when the Brownlees were at their very peak, we used to see those really small breakaway groups. So yeah, it all depends who's racing and who's in the sport at that particular time, but it does change. I think at the moment, like you said, we are going through a stage where the racing is not conducive to very small breakaway groups. But yeah, I think things can change. We've got now a new 4-year cycle, lots of young athletes coming through.
you're talking about breakaways on the bike and trying to pun in 4-year cycle, then we're going to fall out in the commentary booth over the weekend if we go to that level of puns right now. As the leaders come through then on lap 8 of 8 on the bike. These are the final few kilometers.
Just saw Kithia Shah there leading them around that technical section. So she's elected to, you know, she's not sitting around. She probably wants to position herself towards the front of the group. She knows that transition is coming up. So she wants to be in an optimal place when she dismounts her bike, put herself in a really great position heading into transition 2.
Interesting, Naomi Ruff has been on the back of this group pretty much the majority of this bike ride. The American and the Israeli as well, Levi, has both been kind of at the rear of the field rather than trying to get up front and push the tempo at all or help out in terms of leading the group. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but it does catch the ire and attention of some athletes if you're consistently just staying on the back of the group and being dragged along slightly. Shah just taking on a bit of electrolytes, I imagine, a bit of water just up at the front, relinquishing her spot right at the arrowhead of this field. Gap is not being closed down at all too much by the group behind. It's 2.5 minutes still, as it was 2 minutes 45 at our last look at them. I don't think we'll be looking at them too often now, as we'll keep all of our focus on the front 17 in this group and see how they spread out over transition and out on the run.
Yeah, it looked like Levi was just dangling off the back there. I don't know if she might be struggling a little bit on the technical sections. You know, perhaps she's not used to racing on very technical courses. Krylova raced the World Cup in Karlovy Vary. Had a decent result there. Also a young athlete, quite new to racing.
This run course, as we touched on, it's straight down and straight back. Very flat, of course, going along the seafront. All of these ladies are going to know exactly where each other are and are positioned on this circuit out on the run, and where the gaps are starting to form and who's trying to push the tempo, maybe particularly early. First of the 4 laps on the run course out there. Very different to this bike course. You go from so technical, a lot of blind, unknown elements in terms of where everybody else is on the circuit, to having the vantage point of being able to see almost everything play out in front of you. And this, of course, in where all of these ladies will want to be behind you, because they all want to be out in front and leading this group out onto the run, which is just a few kilometers away.
Yeah, just a straight out and back for that run. So pretty much 1.25 Ks out turn and 1.25 Ks back for each lap, which makes up 2.5 Ks, and they'll do that 4 times for them to make up the 10K run.
Does that make it enjoyable? You don't have to think too much. You can just have a pace, a constant pace pretty much, and go? Or do you find it a bit bland, a bit boring, and you can kind of drift off slightly for some athletes?
Yeah, I think you know, you have to try and remain focused, particularly if you are struggling. You know, it can be a little bit bland. Conversely, you don't really have to think about any technical aspects. You can just you know, run. There's no hills, there's no corners. You know, we raced at the World Cup in Rome 2 weeks ago. It was, you know, we said it was kind of like a little bit of a cross-country course without the grass and mud, because there were so many twists and turns, and this is, you know, very, very different to that. It's just straight out and back, hard surface along the beachfront. Might be starting to get a little bit warm along there, maybe not as shaded. So, you know, taking in water, electrolytes. It's an Olympic distance race. These athletes will be racing for nearly 2 hours, so nutrition would have been important. You can see some of them now just taking on some fluid there. Maria Tome was having a drink there on the left of the screen.
Yeah, they're just starting to jostle in for position a bit more again. Some trying to make a bit of extra headway out at the front, so they get ready to take what I think will be the last right turn before the penultimate right turn. They will go down and head down towards La Riviera Boulevard and down towards the water once again.
Freya Rodrigues just tucked in there as well. had a phenomenal race at the Paris test event last year. Really strong result, 24th there. I think that pretty much earned her reserve status for the Olympic Games. So she was in Paris, she didn't race, but she was on the list as a reserve in case anyone became injured or ill.
I had that DNF in Rome just a few weeks ago, but a very strong top 10 in Karlovy Vary in September. I'd argue still the form is with her. Just need to put that frustration of Rome out of her head, I suppose. That's what makes the great athletes great, isn't it? Being able to forget about any of the negatives and just latch onto the positives and keep that drive going as they get down towards the seafront here.
Just see the straps of the shoes have been unfastened. Going to take this right turn and head towards that dismount line. And here's where the positioning is going to be really, really important.
So the last preparations before dismounting just being done there by the athletes. There's a few, I think that's Michalikova just on the left-hand side in all blue. Just starting to sneak her way right to the very front and get the inside track on that turn onto the blue carpet. They're all off the bikes and going into transition then before they get set to go out on the run.
So Tome was first to dismount her bike. Michalikova shortly thereafter. Denizo, Nora Gmur. That looked like Denizo with a fabulous transition there.
Yeah, both her and Michalikova rapid fire out onto the run. Transition 2. No waiting about for that lot at all. Horvath as well making up the top 3 going out onto the run then. Charles just dropped back a few places. Howell's up there as well, the Canadian. Top 10 then, Denizo, Michalikova, Horvath, Kumur, Hayes, Tome, Hadum, Shah, Dreeling and Levi going through transition.
So we have about 4 lead athletes and a little bit of a gap there. Maria Tome, I think that is sitting in 5th place there, just a little bit further back, maybe 2 or 3 seconds behind. It is very, very early days on this 10K run. Lots of running to be had.
Confirmation then of Denizo leading them out. There you see Moore, Denizo and Michalikova on front 3. I'll be wary of others coming from behind that will look to join this group as well at some point. Superb still from Hadum up there in 7th. Junior world champion from last year that we've discussed quite a lot. Talking about joining from the rear guard. Shah and Tome just joining up with the leaders already. No messing about from them. They don't want to be out of the equation too early on. They want to be in the thick of things, and they are doing exactly what they did on the bike, although far sooner on the run, of just getting themselves right up with that leading group.
Denizo, Michalikova, Horvath, Gmur. Gmur leading them at the moment here.
Yeah, the Swiss athlete driving them through. Horvath as well, just staying right on the heels of Michalikova.
Tome now running up at the Shah part of the group, and Denizo just not falling back, but just slotting herself into that back of that group. As we see the chase group now entering transition, they find themselves 2.5 minutes back.
Yeah, it's going to take a almighty run from someone like Julia Broca to get herself up into any sort of contention. You see that Barbara de Koning as well, just getting off her bike and going out onto the run.
2 of our Spanish athletes, and they are top Spanish athletes at the moment in the field.
Well, look, where there's a will, there's a way. Stranger things have happened in the world of triathlon. 2.5 minutes seems a long, long time, though, as Tome and Shah just joining Gmur right up at the front. Shah making a push of her own now on the outside of those two to put herself in the lead position. Horvath and Michalikova staying right with them, but happy to let those 3 jockey it out for the moment. Denizo as well, just starting to drops slightly away, but still staying in contention.
Hadoum and Drailing running together. New territory for Hadoum, running a 10K race for the first time in a triathlon today. And maybe choosing a conservative approach.
It'll be interesting to see if she knows. I'm sure she'll be more than adept at knowing her kind of 10K pace, obviously, but just this first time taking in this event, if there is a slight reservation at the start of the run and then leave something in the tank for maybe later on.
Yeah, she might have had a chat to her coach, and the approach perhaps would have been, you know, don't go out too hard like a 5K race. You know, run a little bit conservative in that first lap and try and negative split. A lot of athletes will run faster in the first few laps and get a little bit slower. We know Gwen Jorgensen was one of those athletes who always used to negative split. She used to, you know, she used to take a little bit long to wind it up. She would start a little bit slow, but she would finish really fast. So sometimes it is, you know, a sensible way to race.
Not only would she finish fast, she does still finish fast, and she tends to finish ahead of most others as well, Gwen Jorgensen. Might be the way to do it. We've got a leading group of 5 or 6 athletes there. Deniso, Horvath, Mikalikova, Kamur, Tomei and Sharp in reverse order then. 6th to 1st through that first run split.
Sometimes it can also take a little while for the legs to start coming round in a 10K off the bike. So, you know, it might take a lap or two to start feeling the legs.
How do you mean feeling the legs, Gillian, for those uninitiated?
Yeah, I mean, your legs always feel a bit strange coming off the bike. It's something you really get used to as an athlete, so it becomes, you know, a normal feeling. But they feel, I guess, like heavy, but almost jelly-like at the same time. So
is that because they've been pushing without having any contact with surface? You know, it's not high impact. So.
Yeah, and I think it's just the position of your body on the bike. You know, you're on a bike, you're in a different position to what you are in a running position. So come the run, you know, it just takes, you know, a lap or so to iron your body out, so to speak. Yeah, and the longer you're on the bike, I guess, you know, the more you're going to feel that way.
There's a couple of athletes there at the front that look like they found their feet fairly early on, in Shah and Tomei, who are leading now. Was just dropping back slightly. Horvath and Mikalikova splitting the first 2 and the rear of that group of 5.
Yeah, the more you race, the more you get used to that feeling, and a lot of triathletes actually run better off the bike than they would run a 10K flat, which is quite interesting. You'd never think, you know, that it would be that way, but strangely, you know, in a lot of cases it is. So
maybe for the triathletes, not for the
unusual breed.
Sunday riders and runners, maybe.
So yeah, Kathia Shah not wanting to hang around for anyone at the moment, so taking the lead. Miria Tomei just tucked in behind her. Zuzana Michalikova. Got Horvath of Hungary and Nora Gmür of Switzerland just sitting there in 5th place at the moment.
See Shah trying to take some water, I think, and ended up dropping it as she did. A few other athletes as well just struggling to get their hands on the vital resources that they need as the heat will just start to go up and up as we continue through this morning.
Yeah, Drailing and Hadoum, and it looks like they are running up upon their countrywoman, or Hadoum's countrywoman there. I think that's Deniso sitting just in front of Drailing.
Yeah, she's been left off the rear of the group now, Deniso.
But yeah, if Hadoum can slot in behind Robin Drailing there and use Robin Drailing to pace off, you know, that will be beneficial for her as well. Robin Drailing finished really strong in Rome. She ran a really strong race there, coming through, you know, quite a lot of athletes towards the end of that run. So might be one of those athletes who does start the run a little bit slowly and winds it up.
Fantastic crowds here on the run course this early morning, and those that have been following, you can see a few spectators gathering down there towards the stands on the blue carpet. Prime seats to be in that.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful morning, and you would hope that some of the age group athletes are out here supporting these stars of the future.
So Shah leads Tomei, leads Mikhalikova, leads Gmur, leads Horvath. Denisov now 9 seconds back of the top 5. Drailing and Hadoum 10 and 11 seconds respectively. So it is going to be a top 5 tussling it out from the looks of it right now as we finish lap 1. Daisy Davies, Marta Kropko, Naomi Ruff, Sophia Howe, 20 seconds adrift in another group of 4. Isabella Hayes, the British athlete, making up the top 13. Unlucky for some. She's 35 seconds, or 30 seconds adrift, should I say. Katie Rodder, her fellow countrywoman, 35 seconds adrift, 14th.
Yes, so Kavya Shah's last Olympic distance race was her race in Paris, finishing 43rd in the individual and 7th in the mixed team relay. Said she struggled with some niggles and a cold after the Olympic Games. And she took a little bit of time off, and then she's been racing on the Super Tri circuit.
She's sticking very much to the center of that run course right now. Tomei's still just tucked in right behind her, just off her right shoulder. Has got herself back up towards the front of this group as well, just in between Tomei and Mikhalikova. Horvath now the one who's just sat off the rear. Here are the French women, although Denisov is just being left behind slightly by Drailing.
And her doom just falling off the back there, but looks like she's just approaching her countrywoman there, Denisov. Just get herself in contact. That would be really, really positive for her. I think Zuzana Michalikova must be one of the most versatile athletes around. She's competed for her country on the mountain bike, winter multi-sports, cycling. Very versatile. Just missed out on qualifying for the Paris Olympic Games. I think she started her campaign to qualifying quite late. She's quite young and new to the sport, so just missed out on that. But you know, she's really young, so massive opportunity for her moving forward. And I think probably having missed out will motivate her even more heading into the next Olympic cycle and into LA. And no reason why she shouldn't, you know, qualify. So long as everything goes well for her heading into those games in 4 years' time.
Does that ability to be a multi-sport athlete help you in triathlon at all, do you think, or can it take away focus and attention to this sport?
I think when you're younger, you know, it's probably fine, but as you get older and you want to focus more on, you know, I guess triathlon, then it's probably important to focus on triathlon. But the mountain biking, the cycling, you know, that's going to complement her triathlon racing in any event. Not so sure about the winter sports, I don't know. I've heard cross-country skiing is really tough, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, sliding up hills always sounds difficult, doesn't it? Competes in winter triathlon events as well, which I can't imagine are the easiest things to be involved in. Mikhalikova is making it look reasonably comfortable out there at the front. The two Swiss athletes just ahead of her, and along with Maria Tomei as well. Always, when you see Tomei just tucked in like that, looking fairly steady, get the feeling that she's just in a groove rather than pushing a tempo just yet. The Portuguese athlete just on the right-hand side of your screen, who every so often just appears around the figure of Mikhalikova. It's just behind her. Shah's just dropped off the lead now, and it's her fellow countrywoman Gmur who is taking them through.
Yeah, we saw that from Tomei a bit last year in the under-23 champs in Pontevedra. Selena Klumt, it took, I think, the last 500 odd meters where Selena Klumt made a kick for it, and Tomei was unable to go with her. But yeah, she hung there. She's doing the same here. It'll be interesting to see how she decides to play this tactically. We know she's in really good form with that 11th place in Paris, a 5th in Caloviveri not too long ago. You can see a replay here of the dismounts and the athletes heading into T2.
Yeah, you'll see Mikhalikova here in the foreground, but keep an eye on the French athlete as well coming through. Denisov was rapid fire through transition. Fortunately for her, she's now 3 or 4 seconds back off the leaders. Denisov and Drailing trying to do their best to stay with the front five. Hadoum 6 seconds off. And then you've got Marta Kropko, 23 seconds adrift in ninth. And Naomi Ruff, the American, in 10th.
So Karolina Horváth, she raced in the mixed team relay qualification event for Team Hungary in Marta Kropko's absence in the lead into Paris, where they unfortunately just missed out on qualifying a second woman for the Paris Olympic Games, with Jeanette Bragmeier, the only female athlete from Hungary, going to Paris. But I'm sure they'll be hoping to rectify that heading into LA. And Horváth is coached by Thomas Tutt, who was head of the World Triathlon Athletes Committee for quite some years. So he's now moved into coaching, so he'll have a lot of experience. He's probably on the side of the course somewhere, shouting some words of advice.
It's probably the man who we heard yelling out a number of the times
Yeah.
on the bike course. Just keeping everybody up to date with what's going on. It looks like Tomei's just gone out in front now, ahead of the two Swiss athletes, Moore and Shah. It's being left slightly by the Portuguese woman. Early days yet still on this run, however.
Yeah, and Denizou has just crept back up, hasn't she, as well?
Yeah, she's done a really good job of getting back up with this group. Did look like both her and Robin Dreiling were both starting to make a push, but Dreiling seems to be left away by the French athlete Denizou.
Yeah, it just looked like she went through a bit of a rough patch, Denizou, and it looked like she's come out of that rough patch, perhaps found her legs, and she just tucked in on the back of that lead group there.
That is Dreiling, the number 10 athlete.
Stuck in a little bit of, I guess, no man's land there, dangling between the back of that lead group and the chasers.
She went through past Denizou, only to be retaken by her. She'll leave a nasty taste in the mouth, to say the least, as she watches Denizou now get back up. Mikalikova just dropping off the back of the leaders for a moment here. It's Tomei who's pushing and leading the charge.
Yeah, and Shah just coming up alongside her as well there. So definitely exchanging leads, these athletes at the moment, probably testing each other, making a few little surges. See Tomei, they're just running at the front, Shah on her shoulder. And I guess Tomei won't want a repeat of what happened last year. So her tactic might be to try and push the pace a little bit earlier. She doesn't want to get on sprinted again. Katia Shah does have quite a good sprint on her. I know that's still very, very early days in the run.
Yeah, but you want to be thinking about that, and I'm sure Maria Tomei has been thinking about last year's finish to the Under-23 World Championships a lot coming into this one, and how close she got before she was just pipped at the final, almost 200 meters in the end, wasn't it? It was an early step from the German last year, but it was one that Tomei just had no reply for, and we were expecting her to go and go and go with her. Never ended up taking place, never came to fruition.
Yeah, and these women all at the moment stuck to each other pretty much like glue.
Mikalikova at the back of the group, tallest, Tomei at the front, the shortest. Quite stacked up in height order, but they're almost, as they come through onto the blue carpet, and they've completed lap 2 of this run, just 2 more to go. Tomei, Gmur, Shah, Portuguese athlete leading the 2 Swiss.
Just see the crowds there starting to build as well, which is nice to see everyone now coming out onto the beachfront. It's a beautiful morning.
Hadoum still grinding in her first Olympic distance event. Her and Dreiling can just see that group ahead, around about 5 or 6 seconds ahead of them. Might not be enough for either one of them to get in contention, although there is almost the element of the unknown here for Ilona Hadoum. We don't know what we're expecting to see from the second half of this run from her. And this will be a distance that she knows well, of course.
Yeah, Nora Gmur of Switzerland as well, also just quietly tucked in there. Perhaps not the result she was hoping for in Rome with the 31st place there, but has had some positive results earlier on in the year with a third at a European Cup in Halton and a sixth at the World Cup in Leuven in France at indoor triathlon.
Yeah, it didn't start in the end in the under-23 World Champs last year, did Nora Kamur. She can finish in one of these top 3 spots. She'll certainly take that if he'd given it to her 12 months prior.
And trailing now, making her way back up to the group.
Just wonder if the group at the front is slow and allowing others into the equation, or if perhaps the likes of Trailing, Denisot, and I mean, never say never when it comes to Ilona Hadoum either. Maybe just finding something a little extra at the end of this one. See Trailing there, the number 10. Reeling those others back in.
Yeah, it may have become a bit tactical. The athletes, you know, they might be surging a little bit, testing each other, with no one making a decisive move at the moment. Having said that, now we can just see, I think it's Gamur right of screen there, having a little bit of a surge, testing the athlete's legs. Looks like everyone for the time being has gone with her.
Making their way down towards this 180-degree turn. Trailing still not quite there yet with the others.
Yeah, I think that surge by Gamur, you know, Trailing was almost onto the back of that group, but that just seems to have prevented her from latching on there.
Tomei has said, well, if you're going to surge, I'll surge too. Once more, she asserts herself back at the front of this group.
And it's almost the first time that we've seen them in single file, and I think that tells you now that the pace has gone up. They're all now slotting in single file behind Maria Thome. She's chosen to make a little bit of a surge, testing the girls' legs behind her. And, you know, once she gets to that turn point, she'll have a little bit of a glance. She'll have a look around, who's still there, who's in the group. For the time being, all of the ladies are still there. Robin Trailing just unfortunately just not making it up to that group. It's coming into shot now.
Nothing really on her tail either though right now, as others just starting to fall away from that lead group. Is that one of the Swiss athletes?
I think that might be Gamur that we're just losing at the back of that group, and it looks like perhaps Denisot, yeah, just a tiny gap there.
Yeah, that is spot on. Gillian Gamur's just perhaps seen too much pace from Tomei suddenly come, as Shah, Horvath and Michalikova at the front four. Denisot is still just about staying with them, but only just.
Yeah, you could see how Maria Thome took that corner. She surged out of the corner. You can see there's a little bit of a gap now from that aerial shot there that's formed. She's just applying the pressure. She's just testing the legs of the ladies behind her. Who's still there? Who's coming with her?
It's the top 3 as Kathia Shah is starting to fall away slightly. Horvath is right up there on the coattails of the Samaki and Michalikova. Tomei asking the question. And there are rebuttals from others as the 4 just about staying with each other once again. There's Gamur just seeing them drift off up ahead of her.
Denisot just dangling off the back there. We've seen her in that position before. She was able to get back on again.
I wonder if that's also a point where someone like Tomei is going to look and say, if I can do that again at lap 4, there might be a few more that can't come with me if I have a kick before the turn and a kick after. Just testing out where's the best place to make her move, perhaps on the final lap, if she is going to try and up the tempo, if she can up the tempo. Depends what she's got left in the tank leading them right now, but doesn't necessarily mean that she's going to have the gas left over to be able to make that big kick if and when she needs it. Michalikova suddenly looking quite strong just behind her. Mikalikova was one that maybe 300 meters ago, you were wondering if she was going to be the one that was dropped off the back of that group. Not to be the case, as she stands right behind Tome.
Yeah, all in single file now. Tome really applying some pressure.
Shah still staying with Horvath just on the back of the Ford. Denisov trying to stick with them.
Zuzana Michalikova is coached by her mother. There's a lot of cross-country running as well, and that'll obviously stand her in good stead strength-wise on this run.
And that gives us about, what, 6 extra sports that she does outside of triathlon?
I'm sure her mom's probably on the sides there watching.
Fighting just to keep that gap where it is. Mikalikova looks strong though, as she is almost touching and clipping the heels of Maria Tome.
Yeah, nothing between these 4 women at the moment.
Is there a last push from Denisov at all left? It's end to lap 3 that's going to be setting us up for what could be a very intriguing finish to these under-23 Women's World Championships on lap 4.
You just see the palm trees there, the breeze just starting to pick up, and the banners there blowing in the wind. And this is probably going to be a key section of the course when they hit this part on the last lap. If there's any technical part of the course, then this is it, where they make that turn and head back through transition, and they will obviously head into the finish line on the last lap where they take this left turn.
Just got to make sure that they take the right section of the blue carpet. Final lap coming up here for the leaders then. 4 seconds separate the top 5. 0 seconds separating the top 4. Tome just going into the shade slightly, and Mikalikova sees that as the opportunity to get right alongside the Portuguese woman. 1 lap remaining, this lap remaining, to decide which one of these women is going to be the under-23 World Champion 2024.
Looks like Denisov is coming back at them. I mean, it's looked like that for a while now, but I wouldn't say she's, you know, totally lost contact. 4 seconds adrift of the leaders at the moment.
Not quite like Nora Kamura, who's just falling back into the clutches of Robin Dreiling and Ilona Hadou, although they're about 25 to 30 seconds back further down the road. Tome has another look just over her shoulder. Doesn't really need to worry too much. You can probably hear the feet of Mikalikova right behind her, right in her ear every step of the way. Around about 2 kilometers or so to go. 2,000 meters, possibly about 2,000 steps or so.
Yeah, and once they hit that turn on the far end of the course, they'll know that they've got 1.25 kilometers left. They'll know from those training sessions that it's only 1.25 kilometers, just need to hang tough and choose where they're going to make that decisive move.
Shah taking on some water and suddenly looking buoyed by that. She slots into 2nd position between Tome and Mikalikova. Denisov again just won't go away, the French woman. There's a persistence to her. A gap between her and the leaders down to about 3 seconds or so. Just staying there. It's not doing her much good in terms of maybe a battle for podium positions. Surely there's no doubt now that the top 3 is going to come from these top 5. Take a Herculean effort from Nora Kimura or Robin Dreiling to put themselves in a position for a medal.
Yeah, Shah just slotting herself, and she might be aware of the fact that Tomei chose to surge, you know, on this part of the course on the last lap, and she wants to make sure that she's right in contact with her to cover any surges if they take place.
When will that surge come from the leader or from one of those just behind her? Will it be out of the dead turn? As everything will slow down slightly, will that be the time for somebody to make a kick? Or will it be left until late? If it's going to be late, how late?
Looks like Horvath has now also come up on the shoulder of Shah, now sitting in 3rd place. Michalikova has now moved to 4th place. Looks like Tomei's trying to string them out there. A little bit of pressure being applied.
Shah's having none of it for the moment. Horvath just starting to drop a little. Maybe half a step further back than she was.
Denizo still hanging tough there in 5th place.
Look over her shoulder as well, just to check where Nora Kimura and Robin Dreiling are.
Looks like the gap's gone out a little bit to Denizo again. Perhaps gone out from about 3 or 4 seconds to about 5 or 6 seconds there.
Yeah, she was about 2 of those blue cones separated from her and the leaders. There's about 4 or 5 keeping her adrift as they come down to the turn. Tomei hasn't made the push yet.
So nothing decisive yet. I'd say she perhaps made more of a decisive move on the previous lap, so let's see.
There are a couple of quicker steps out of the dead turn from Tomei, and I think she is starting to suddenly click through the gears a little bit more. The pace seems to be amping up slightly, and Shah, Horvath and Michalikova will look to try and stay with her.
Yeah, she knows it's just over 1K to go. She's going to want to wind it up as much as she can. Shah's still right there on her shoulder. Horvath of Hungary also right there. Michalikova right there.
Which of these 4 has something a little extra left in them? Something a little special right at the end to give them gold in the Under-23 World Championships. Like the opportunity doesn't often come. There is certainly a time limit to be an Under-23 World Champion. Tomei, who was so frustrated to just miss out last year, is going to have to fight tooth and nail right till the end as well. Shah just might be getting blocked off slightly by some of the back markers, but she's through and past Tomei. And Horvath as well, just looking to get right on the shoulder of the Portuguese woman, who has led for the majority, really, of this run. But Shah now, right at a pivotal point, is starting to put herself in first. And is she just suddenly starting to make a move right at the end? We can't even see the blue carpet yet. When that comes into their eye line on the left-hand side of the road, that will be when they know they're just a few meters away from victory. Will that provide the drive or the spark for a late push? Tomei tucked in behind Shah. Michalikova sat at the back. Horvath right on the shoulder still.
Yeah, nothing between these 4 women at the moment. Tomei's tried to make a move. Shah's tried to make a move.
Shah looks like she's going again. Horvath looking to stick with Tomei. Michalikova still staying. Shah's just getting clawed back in. They can see the stands just on the left-hand side, I'm sure, just coming into their eye line.
Yeah, Horvath now.
The Hungarian going. Looking to stay alongside the Swiss athlete. And Tomei perhaps just being dropped off a little. It could still be too early, though, from Shah. Last bits of water to be handed out. Don't think anybody's taking it. No one wants to break stride as Horvath puts herself in a position. Tome going as well. Michalikova is leaving Shah as Shah has gone a little too early. Tome, Horvath, Michalikova too, making a push from third to see if she can get up with these leading pair. Shah just hasn't got anything left in her. Perhaps that push on the bike was too much, leading that chasing group as the Hungarian looks to go and keep going. Michalikova trying to get right up on her right shoulder as well there and give herself an opportunity. Some of the other athletes perhaps getting in the way of touch. It's quite a tight street. There's still a long way to go. There's the full length of the blue carpet and then some on this road before making that left-hand turn. Shah's been dropped. It's going to be these three that will make up the top three, but in which order? It's still unclear. Tome trying to push to get around the outside of Michalikova if possible, if there's a gap. But it's the Hungarian, Karolina Horvath, that is leading them through. One last left-hand turn, and then it's the sprint to the finish as Michalikova starts to go. What a surge from her on the outside as she takes the lead into the final turn. Tome starting to fall away from the front two. Horvath and Michalikova, they're going to push each other the whole way. It's the Hungarian making strides down the last few meters, and it is her who is going to be the under-23 world champion 2024. The tape is in sight. The last few steps just need to be taken. Michalikova pushing right at the end, but it's Horvath who's able to react and retaliate and take gold here in Torremolinos. Michalikova will take second, Tome will take third. It's another podium finish for the Portuguese woman. Kathia Shah will take fourth, and I think there's just a moment of reflection there from Tome and Shah, who had to put in the hard graft as that chase pack on the bike. And I think they knew that they couldn't get themselves in those positions without each other today. Shah falls short once again, missing out on the podium in the Under-23 World Championships. Tome falls short with just a bronze medal this time to add to her silver from 12 months ago. Michalikova wearing the number one today with the pressure of that, able to at least get herself second place on the podium. But it is Horvath, the Hungarian, who came right at the end with that push, who stayed there all the way through that run, that takes top spot.
Candice Denizo coming in fifth there, 38 seconds adrift.
Take a breath for a moment. What a finish that is. I mean, we get entertainment at these Under-23 World Championships a lot of the time, and that was superb to watch right at the end.
Yeah, I mean, the lead has changed. That last lap of the run, that was incredibly exciting. Fabulous racing by these young athletes.
Moore coming in sixth in the end, the Swiss athlete, trailing the Dutch woman in seventh. Hadoum eighth. What a superb run in her first ever Olympic distance event. That was fantastic from the French woman, the junior world champ from last year. Marta Kropko comes in ninth, and Sophia Howell will make up the top 10 in the end. Naomi Ruff just misses out, the woman from the United States, in 11th. Daisy Davies comes in 12th, the first British athlete to finish. But you're right there, Gillian. I mean, it was finishes like that. 3 lead changes, perhaps, in the final few hundred meters or so.
Yes,
and Michalikova made that push right at the end before the last turn, and you're thinking, she's done it. And Horvath comes right back right at the end.
Yes, so tough to call. You know, when Michalikova led them around the corner, you know, I thought she had it in the bag. But Horvath with a massive sprint there to take the title. Incredible racing by the Hungarian athlete. You know, I think few would have called that before today's race. She had a 7th in Huetelka at a World Cup earlier this year.
The frustration of not finishing in Tizzy as well, obviously, which means so much to the Hungarian athletes. And again, I'm not saying that that's the reason why, but you know, there are those little things that build up. The ability to put on a show here, of course, at the Under-23 World Championships and wipe away the frustration of not finishing in Tizzy.
She was 8th at the last edition of the Under-23 Worlds in Pontevedra, so you know, showed promise there, and fabulous racing by Carolina Helga Horvath today.
Yeah, it was quite magnificent kick just as they got into that transition area, basically, that she made. Julia Brocker, frustration for her perhaps to finish in 16th in the end, ranked in the top 10 of the athletes on the starting line today. Julia Behrens as well, almost 4 minutes adrift of the leaders.
Prokhorova of Czechia finishing in 19th there. Looks like the first of our Spanish athletes is going to round out the top 20. That'll be Maria Casals Mojico.
She gets the adulation. You can see there in the grandstand on the left just the roar of support as she came down the finishing straight to make up a top 20 finish. Nothing to shy away from at all, that.
Carolina, you're under-23 world champion in some style. Can you just talk us through that final couple of 100 meters? It was intense.
I can't really say anything. I was like, I'm here. I already did all the work to get to the championships. And I was like, I have to try it. I did a pretty long sprint at the end, but I was like, this is the only chance I have. And I did it, but I still can't believe. I think I need a few days to process this. But it's amazing, really.
It's going to be a magical few days for sure, remembering that there was 6 of you together on the run and then it boiled down at the halfway point when there was still 6. Can you remember like how you were feeling? Were you sort of playing each other off a little bit?
Yeah, I think for me, the first 2 laps was like the wrong pace. It was not fast, but not slow. It was just uncomfortable. So I enjoyed the 2 last laps more when we put a little piece on that run. So I think for me, the second half of the run was better.
And you'd done so much work on that bike to get the gap, and then it came back in. It must have been frustrating when the packs came together.
Yeah, it was. I knew that Katja is the strongest on the bike, and she did all the work alone, I guess, in the second group. But when they get to us, I tried to rest a little for the run, and I tried to get off the bike at the first few people, and I did it. So I went to run, I guess, on the 3rd place. So everything was 10 out of 10.
After a long, tough season, to come away with the gold in the Under-23 World Championships speaks to a huge amount of work and a great team.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't say anything. Everybody cheered for me during the run on the bike, and especially Thomas. She's like my coach and my friend. So yeah, this means everything for me.
Brilliantly done. Well done.
Thank you.
Can we have Susanna? Susanna Mikalikova. Yeah, in you go.
No hard questions.
Congratulations, no hard questions, I promise. Well, Silva coming out of an incredible finish there as well. You must be delighted with that race.
I would say like second is not bad, but I really enjoyed the race, and it was very tough, you know, because I felt on the swim very bad, but after on the bike and transition and run, I like every K feel better and better. So it's amazing, you know, like because the season was very long. So I'm very happy that his last race and is on the podium. So.
Long indeed, long 2 seasons really. The amount of races you've put together over the last couple of seasons, the miles you've covered, the work you've put in, this is all the culmination of that, right?
Yeah, sure. Because was a qualification in Olympics, so I really wanted the the start in the Paris, but.
Well, yeah, we knew you wanted it, and you obviously really wanted it out there today. Just give us the final kind of minute run through there. How were the legs?
It was, I don't know, I had like 4 or 5 gels, so it was tough, but yeah, I felt on the run great, so yeah.
Well, it was a brilliant race. Thanks for the entertainment. Congratulations. Brilliant silver.
Thank you very much.
And Maria, we have Maria Tomei. Maria, bronze here in Torremolinos, a great race. Another tough under-23 world champs for you, back-to-back podiums.
Yeah, after last year being second, of course today I wanted the gold, but yeah, Carolina take the best.
And a great podium. Bronze on such a tough race, such a tough field out there as well. Not the first tough field you've had, like that Olympic performance as well. The form that you're in at the moment has been outstanding.
Thank you. Yeah, after the Olympics I get more confident, and I think that gave me more strength to be here stronger. But yeah, I didn't get out so good off the water, so we needed to catch back. And thank you, Katja, for helping, because without her we couldn't catch the group. And yeah.
Once you were into that group, was it a case of just taking the edge off a little bit and being able to sit in, or was there any intention to then force another move?
For me, I needed to rest a little bit because I was all in, and then anybody wanted to go because we were there with 2 minutes and a half, I think. So we were looking at each other and controlling to start to run with the fresher legs.
And towards the end there, did you fancy the sprint? Carolina just took it, but you must have backed yourself at the couple of 100 meters out as well.
Yeah, I tried on the last lap to keep the pace harder, but they continued there, and then on the end I didn't have more legs to do a sprint finish.
It was a hell of a finish out there. Thanks very much. Well done.
Thank you.
Let's have a quick look back then. The ladies going into transition before going out on that run, a run that sounded like it was certainly a run of 2 halves, really. The first half that was the pace setter, and the second half that was almost the tone setter for the finish in terms of upping the ante a lot from what they were saying down there.
Yeah, it sounded like it was tactical, just wound it up as the run went on.
That explains why we lost the likes of Moore and Denisot. Just as the run would continue, those couldn't stick with the pace of the leading 4 or so. Trailing Denisot getting dropped off very early. Gamur as well then would struggle later on in the run as it would continue. And it would end up being final 4 up at the front once the second Swiss athlete was dropped away. She stuck with it as long as she could, though, Nora Gamur. It's the surprise of Horvath being able to stay with that group, be up with that group for so long and tussle it out and go toe-to-toe, because I think you mentioned earlier, Gillian, wasn't necessarily a name that jumped off the sheet, so to speak, in terms of we expected to be up there in a final 4 or whatever.
Yeah, if you look at the form book, you know, she's had a bit of a difficult racing period, I guess, in July, August. Had that great result in Huitzelke early on in the year. But yeah, she's obviously done a really good training block, and you know, chatted to Coach Thomas Stadt, really focused on this race, and fantastic performance by Carolina Horvath today.
Yeah, she was one that every so often, again, much like so many others in this run group, you just wondered if she was at a point going to get dropped off when the likes of Tomei just started to push the tempo a bit more. This is the Dutch woman Robin Dreiling, who was lost off the back of this group, as would Gamur. Much to the frustration of Candice Denisot, who was leading right there up at the front, really, from the word go today. Was up there in the top 2 or 3 in the swim. Was up there on the bike for the whole of the bike, 40 kilometres, and was almost up there for the whole of the run. But it was this last 4 out onto the final lap then Tomei leading them from Michalikova, Shah and Horvath's just sitting off the back of the leading four until this point. This is when Tomei, you could see she started to make a push.
Different, so yeah, it will be interesting to see where they choose to start.
Once they're all out on the waterfront, there's nothing but the last few seconds to wait before the klaxon sounded. And away we went on the Andalusian coast. A relatively uncontroversial swim in the end. The set out certainly aids that as well, with not too much tussling around the boys, and Liberty Ricker, the American, leading the charge out there, supported by Candice Deniso. Those were the front two really for the majority of the first lap. Ricker just couldn't handle, I think, the pace and quality up at the front once we got out of the water, but a sterling job at least on the opening lap to send them all the way back to the beach, with the American taking charge from the start. Two laps of the 750 meters. A couple of stumbles for some of those just getting out of the water. Said it could be a little tricky with the sandbanks. Sophia Howell, the Canadian, right up at the front as well. She would eventually finish up and near the top 10. She was always up at the front of this swim, the Canadian. Very impressive, actually, to get herself in the top 10, really, for Paola. Again, another one of those who just led from the front, always on the front of the bike. Just didn't quite have it on the run in the end, as she would help bring them back through towards dry land at the end of this swim. Down into transition, and there were some unbelievably rapid-fire transitions, including from Candice Denisot. T1, very smooth and calm for the leading Canadian, but she was picked to being first out on the bike by the French woman. Those two initially setting a pace before being gathered up by another 7 or so as Michalikova and co put the work in to get themselves in a front 9 that were there for a large part, certainly the first half of the bike ride, leading the charge. There was but the under-23 world champ then, just a 4th win of her career. A woman who struggled at the European Sprint Championships this year, came 37th in the under-23 category, in that a top spot at the World Championships. Superb finish for her and for Hungarian Triathlon.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the playing of the national anthem of Hungary. Señoras y señores, rogamos que se pongan en pie para escuchar el himno nacional de Hungría.
The Hungarian national anthem playing out then. Chance for the photo op for these ladies. And of course, the bit that I'm sure the athletes have been waiting for a little bit, the champagne to come as well. Always tastes a little better when you're stood on the top of the podium.
Yeah, and they can possibly actually enjoy it this time because it's the end of the season. No more races to be had for some of these athletes. Some will obviously be going on to race some World Cups and things, but hopefully able to enjoy this moment.
May want to spray it a little less and enjoy the taste a little more then, if that's the case, as the champagne starts to overflow. Well, every last drop is fully deserved then for Carolina Helga Horvath. Resilient on the run right until the end. Staying with some of the big contenders that we expected to see up there. But it was the Hungarian that had the might of all of them to be able to make that final surge right at the end. Well, Decisive just could watch the battle unfolding in front of her. It was Horvath who made her kick right on the final stretch, had to deal with this from Michalikova. But on the last 50 or so meters, Horvath finding the energy for the sprint finish when no one else could.
Tengo que cambiar batería, Álvaro.
Frustration for Sharp, perhaps as well for Tomei, who will look at the silver and bronze medals in the collection and wonder for a second straight year perhaps what could have been. We offer